waiting for the thing to get up there, because, you've got to be, someone may come in that's dying to come to our meetings. All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Joshua Basin Water District for Wednesday, December 5th, 2018 at 6:30. Please rise and join Jim in the Pledge of Allegiance.
That's all. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Determination of the quorum.
Madam President, all 5 directors are here. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Turn your cell phones off. So they don't feel mine do. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda?
Is there a correction?
Yes.
Where is it?
Go ahead. I emailed in advance. It's under item 10, Water Resources and Operations Committee. It should say President Weckman and Director Fund.
Yes. You got that. Okay, with that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I had a correction then too on the consent calendar, the draft minutes of the regular board meeting.
What page?
Page 5 of 6-9.
Is it the Director Flowen made the motion
Yeah.
and then he seconded it?
Yeah.
Doug's got that already.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That takes care of the agenda. We will now move to public comment. Members of the public may address the board at this time with regard to matters within the board's jurisdiction that are not listed on the agenda. State law prohibits the board of directors from discussing or taking action on items not included in the agenda. Members of the public will have the opportunity for public comment on any item listed on the agenda when it is addressed on the agenda. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. Any public comment?
You ready, Bob?
Can you turn it off?
Hello. Hi, I'm Jim Corbin, Joshua Basin Water District employee, and I'm here tonight to say a couple things. First of all, that it's not often that employees and board of directors intermingle, so there's a lot of reasons for that. There's, rules and guidelines and perception and stuff like that. But I want to thank the board for really putting their heart into what they do. I believe all of them really care about their community, and they've made some hard decisions with that. And it's starting to flow downhill, so to speak. So as an employee, I get to see the fruits of their labor, which is the way that we're moving forward with staffing and infrastructure improvements and stuff like that. It's been a long time coming. So I want to thank the whole board for that. I know it's really tough sometimes to make those decisions. So they have. So I also want to thank Mr. Tom Flowen for his time on the board. I've had the opportunity to talk with Mr. Flowen several times, and he also but he shows up at scenes once in a while after hours. He wants to engage himself in what goes on here at the district, and although in the past we've had some directors that probably wouldn't be such a good idea, I think times have changed and we need to recognize that. Like I said, all the directors are committed, and Mr. Flowen, for one. At first I was a little reluctant when he would show up on leaks because I didn't know how the staff would feel, but it was all done in such a professional manner through Kurt, the general manager, and then also through me at some point. And I know all my staff appreciates his showing up and asking questions in an appropriate manner. Sometimes the job sites can be dangerous and so forth, but he was always respectful to that, and he never interjected anything but positivity. He wanted to see how the district operated and functioned. Like I know a lot of you have as well. Mr. Johnson and I have met, and the rest of you, we've met too. But I think it's important for the public to know that it takes a lot to run a water district. And the most important thing to me, besides staff and all that, is our infrastructure. You know, we have to provide safe, clean drinking water, and that's not always cheap, nor is it easy. And a lot of the boards that have been here have kicked the can down the road, so to speak. This board has not, and I think that's huge from my perspective in almost 14 years. I'm really excited to see the changes and stuff like that. So I wanted to recognize all the directors, but especially Tom, since he'll be changing pace here soon, I guess. But I appreciate your ability to want to know what's going on so you can make your decisions the best that you could. And I know my staff does. 2 showed up today. Maybe we could talk them into saying something. But anyways, that's pretty much all I have. I just want to say thank you. And lastly, real quick, is that perception of the relationship between the board and the employees can be convoluted sometimes. But I think it's important that you all don't be afraid to ask, you know. It's important that we all work together, and I think that with what you guys are doing, and now with Kurt's direction and Mark and others, that we're on the right path, and we can kick the can down the road like every other government agency, but that's not going to get us anywhere. So those people that want to complain, you know, hey, this is where we're at. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Tom.
You're most welcome.
All right, appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
Oh, any questions? I'm full of them.
Any other public comment? None? Thank you both. 2 of our staff guys are here. Dan and Jeremiah are here, so we really appreciate you being here. We'll show off how great we are for you. Very good, thank you. We will move to item number 6, the consent calendar. Matters on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted in a single motion without discussion. Any board member or member of the public may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and acted on separately. And the 2 items are to draft of the minutes of the November 17th special meeting of the Board of Directors and the draft of the minutes of the November 17th, 2018 regular meeting of the Board of Directors. So do I have a motion?
I move we approve the draft minutes of November 7th special meeting and the draft minutes of November 7th regular meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the consent calendar is passed. Okay, now is for the fun part. You guys don't have to stay for this. You can, but you don't have to. Review of fiscal year ending 6/30/2018 and 17. And this is the audit report. And I think we go on to...
We're going to start with
I'll
Susan.
start, yeah.
Susan, sorry, Susan.
We're talking tonight about the audit for the fiscal year ending 6/30/18. Jonathan Abadesco, who's a CPA, is here from the audit firm that the district uses, Fedak and Brown. Jonathan is the audit manager. He was here in earlier last month, November 8th, it says here, and presented to the Finance Committee, and they recommend that the board accept and file the report. We got the results we were looking for, the opinion, which is that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material aspects. The management discussion and analysis, there's some easy, quick read more at the front of the report. We met all the requirements. Our staff does an amazing job, both, the customer service folks, the finance folks who, do hundreds of thousands of transactions in a year. That takes a measure of accuracy, which they have in spades. I appreciate all of that kind of work, their accuracy, their attention to detail, but the lion's share of the audit rests on the shoulders of Ann Roman sitting here next to me. She puts in hundreds of hours in a year to work on the audit, and a lot of that is on evenings and weekends. So we're very fortunate to have Ann on our team. I'm fortunate to work with her. It's a privilege, really,
Thank you.
to work with you. So, Jonathan, we're ready to hear from you.
So let's go to the fun part.
Yeah.
So,
You all have a copy of the report.
dear members of the board, management, the public, employees of the district, we are here to present the 2018 financial statements for the district. So here's our audit team. Here, Chris, Chuck, myself, and our staff. So, state law requires that the district to have a audit performed each year by qualified CPA. So every January 31st or 7 months after the fiscal year end date, a copy of the audit report needs to be submitted to the state auditor's controller's office, including the results of that year's operations. Okay. So the report of the district is being submitted to the following agencies, mainly County of San Bernardino, LAFCO, US Bank, USDA, and also to the public. Okay. So we are here. So the way we do it is that we audited your financial statements to make sure that it's in accordance with US GAAP. Our audit process is governed by AICPA and federal and state requirements. GAAP is established by Governmental Accounting Standards Board. On your packet, you have the district's annual financial report and the management report. So overall, during the year, we did not identify any material weakness within the control structure of the district. Kudos to Ann and Susan and Kurt, for having a team that making sure that all the processes are being did right. Okay. So on the management report, on your packet, I'll just summarize those. So there were no uncorrected misstatements. So on pages 4 and 5, those are all the adjustments. So we made sure that all of those are properly accounted for. We did not consult with other accountants. There were no difficulties encountered during our audit. There were no disagreements with management. Okay. So as what Susan was saying a while ago, on page 16 of the packet, we issued an unmodified or clean opinion, meaning the financial statements of the district in all due respects is in accordance with US GAAP. On your packet, this is the table on page 18 of the packet. So the statements of net position includes all districts' investments in resources, which are the assets, deferred outflows of resources, obligations to creditors, which are your liabilities, and the deferred inflows of resources, which primarily talk about pension costs. It also provides the basis for computing a rate of return to evaluate the capital structure of the district and to assess the district's overall liquidity and financial flexibility moving forward. So here's the table. So the statements of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, which is this table right here on page 19 of your packet. Okay. It measures the success of the district's operations over the past year. So if you look at the change column, the district has a 1.4 million change in that position, which is your revenue minus your expenses. Okay? So this statement can also be used to determine if the district has successfully recovered all of its costs through the rates and other charges. Also, it can be used to evaluate profitability and creditworthiness. So here are the financial highlights from those two tables. So your equity or your net position, which is your assets minus your liabilities, will equal your equity or net position. Increased by 739,000 as a result of your district's ongoing operations. Total revenue increased by 544,000 during the year, which primarily consisted of operating revenues increasing by close to 400,000 due to water consumption sales increase and water service charges. Non-operating revenue increased by a little over 150,000 due to investment earnings and your operating revenue from High Desert Medical Center. Okay. Your total expenses increased by 400,000 due to increasing your G&A expense or general administrative expenses of 300,000 and transmission and distribution of 200,000. So let's move to the next slide. Here's your CalPERS retirement for the district. I think Anne is on page of the packet. I forgot the page. Please stand up. Yeah, page. It's on page
46.
It's on page 46, right, of the packet. So this table shows you that the CalPERS retirement of the district is really dependent on the rate of return that is being established by CalPERS. So your current, the current rate of return is the one in the middle, which is 490,000. So given the fact that, let's say, assuming that your discount rate was minus 1%, it will be higher. If the discount rate is more than 1%, then it will give you a lower net pension liability. Okay. Sorry. So yeah, to sum up our report, we issued a clean opinion. How does the district stack up? So given the funding levels of the district compared to other districts, you're funded 80%, which is great compared to other districts in terms of you being funded favorably. Okay. Your net position, or the way to measure district's health, has increased from fiscal year 17 to 18, which is about 700,000. And Anne will show you on the next slide the cash balances, which is this one.
Yes. Okay. So on this slide, we have the cash balances at 6/30/18, which reflect the reserve fund policy changes that were adopted in April of 2018 by the board. Per this policy, the cash is segregated into three categories. We have restricted reserves in the leftmost column with figures in it. These are
are limited by outside sources, the use of which is limited by outside sources. And in this category of reserves, which totals $2,112,718, includes capacity fees restricted by government code and also includes bond funds related to the Copper Mountain Assessment District. This balance of $2,112,718 is reflected on page 11, which is 26 of the packet, in the cash and cash equivalents restricted. And these funds are maintained in the LAIF Local Agency Investment Fund. In the blue column there, the second column, which is unrestricted, designated, we have reserves that are allocated to a specific purpose by the Board of Directors. This category totals approximately $7,182,627 and includes items such as the Emergency Capital Replacement Reserve, the Operating Reserve, and the Capital Improvement Plan Reserve. It also includes the Equipment and Technology Replacement Reserve, Studies and Reports, and the Building Reserve as well. These funds are maintained in LAIF as well. Then in the third column, in the green, we have the unrestricted and undesignated reserves, which have no particular restrictions imposed upon them. This category is the smallest portion at $356,915 and includes the general fund, payroll fund, and miscellaneous funds like petty cash and change fund. These are the funds that are maintained at U.S. Bank. So the combined total of $7,539,542, which is actually the total of the unrestricted designated in the blue and the unrestricted undesignated in the green, that is reflected on page 11 or page 26 of the packet in the cash and cash equivalents line, just so you can see how those break down. And the total cash represented here on the slide, the cash that we had in the bank at 6/30/2018 was $9,652,260. So with that, I will conclude and we'll open up for questions, I believe.
Any questions from the board first?
Thank you, Jonathan, very much. Something that either I've never noticed it or it's never been brought to my attention is who all gets a copy of this audit. And the county, LAFCO, Mojave Water Agency, who's ever in charge of that Copper Mountain Mesa assessment and all that. And so really happy to send them something that looks this good. And that's great. I had some questions just on terms. You know, accounting terms are not terms that you normally use, I don't think, in daily life. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding what they are. On page 14 of the audit,
Page 14.
it'd be page 29 of 69, talks about an irrevocable split interest agreement. What the heck is that?
Let me see, hold on.
Page 14.
Yeah, 14.
81.
So, this one, this is a statement that doesn't apply to you guys.
Okay.
So this is just to recognize all the GASB
The new stuff that
pronouncement,
came
the new
out.
stuff that came
Okay.
out.
Then also there on the bottom, the last paragraph, about certain debt extinguishment issues. What is in substance defeasance of debt?
So same thing, this one doesn't apply to you. So
Okay.
in substance defeasance mainly talks about, let's say if you had a debt, outside debt that is forgiven.
Oh.
So that mainly, this standard mainly talks about that item.
But
Just
these
in
were all
case.
these new
Yeah.
things that we were told were coming, okay. Then on page 16, Under capital assets, it says, "District policy has set the capitalization threshold for reporting capital assets at $5,000. Is that I guess, Susan and Ann, is that a good amount? Should we keep it at that?
That's a good amount.
And the threshold is good at that amount because why?
Smaller items there's a huge effort in setting up assets and maintaining them over a lifetime of the, I'm sorry, I'm talking. There's a lot of effort associated with them. I am, sorry. So, when I first started here, that limit was 500. I mean, we were capitalizing stuff all the time. Then we increased it, I think, to 1,000. Same thing. It's just a prudence measure, I think. It just doesn't make sense for smaller amounts.
Because that seems small to me.
This was a recommendation.
Recommendation from one of our prior auditors.
So, and there's no recommendation to raise that threshold?
We haven't heard one.
I just want to add something. The $5,000 is the current federal threshold.
Okay.
So,
So we're good.
yes, very good.
And then one last thing, on page 37 of 69, where it talks about assets, depreciable assets, I guess I was kind of struck that our depreciation's catching up too quickly with the asset values. I mean, yes, I'm glad we are doing these capital improvement programs, because it was almost like, it says here, like, say, for transmission and distribution system, I guess the balance is at 41 million, but if I'm reading this right, the accumulated depreciation is 23 million.
Correct.
That's
exactly why we're sitting in the position that we're in. With the quality of the main lines that we have, you've hit right on what
Yeah.
the problem is here.
Yeah.
They've been in the ground a long time.
Yeah.
And, they can last longer than their, book life, per se, but you've hit right on the.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions from the board?
Yes. Well,
Dr. Floyd?
sort of a question. I wanted to, on page 26, where's 26? R26.
On which page?
26 of 69, page 11. I just wanted to reiterate about the reserves we have on hand, because it popped up a couple of times in the recent campaigns. And in particular, I wanted to mention again that $2 million in change that's restricted, that means that we absolutely cannot spend that. Other people outside the district control that money. We cannot spend it. So it's like we don't have it. And so we actually only have $7.5 or so million. And then the board has restricted that so that staff can only spend it in certain ways. And if my memory serves, some of that now is going to be moved into our battle funds for these giant construction projects that we're going to have too. So that is actually, it's an accurate number, but it's not a true number, because that's going to be greatly reduced as we move it into these funds for spending.
Right, going forward, you're right, the number's correct, but we have different use for it going forward, I think is what you're alluding to here.
Yeah,
We're going to draw down our reserve over time, that's the plan.
Yeah.
That's the rate study plan.
So this right here, when somebody says, why are you raising my rates when you have $10 million in the bank? We don't.
Right.
We don't, or it's committed in such a way to where we don't have any spare change, so to speak.
Right.
It's for good purposes, plus we have to have our emergency funds and stuff too. We're the water company, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
There was one other thing, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I think it's on page 30, 30 of 69, that's page 15 also. The preparation of basic financial statements in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles requires management to make estimates and assumptions that affect the reported amounts of assets and liabilities and disclosures of contingent, disclosures of contingent assets and liabilities at the date of financial statements and the reported changes in net position during the reporting period. Actual results could differ from those estimates.
I read that for two reasons. One is because I just thought we should speak about estimates. Two, to kind of give a picture to anybody on YouTube to what the content of this thing appears to be. So this thing about making estimates or forecasting, perhaps, how do you apply that? And what does it mean if your guess wrong on your estimates? If you
I think that's a question Jonathan should answer, right?
Let me answer that. Actually, on your books, the estimates consist of depreciation because, based on your calculation, let's say on note 9, I think on the next page, you have set that transmission and distribution system will last from 3 to 50 years. And same thing with surveys and plans or vehicles and large equipment, which may last between 5 to 10 years. So that in essence is an estimate. So estimate may consist of a depreciation due to wear and tear of the property that you have or capital assets you have. Also, a good example of an estimate that is in your books is the actuarial report from CalPERS. So the pension expense, which sometimes gets too convoluted in terms of the reason why we put this language here is to inform the readers that your statement consists not only of actual numbers, but it consists also of estimates such as depreciation and pension expense. And also a good example would be if you have allowance for doubtful accounts. Let's say over the course of the year you estimate that let's say $20,000 worth of customer debt will not be collectible over time. So that's it.
Do we make estimates with revenue also? It seems like, what I was thinking of, and it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but the revenue from the property tax, or from our part of the property tax that we get from the county, which is something like $441,000, it kind of bumped up a little bit. If some of these increases and decreases are so minor, I assume you just expect. In other words, those differences are so small that they're not a difference in your planning and in your budgeting and stuff. Because you probably know after 30 years, how much your property tax, that revenue that we get the standby fees, I guess it's called.
The estimates come more on the budgeting end, on the front end, where we're sometimes needing to bring information to the board with the budget, and we don't have the information yet from the county. They give us information for the property taxes and, how much they project, or they estimate, they'll get. So there are more estimates on the front end as far as that's concerned. I mean, we're recording the actual receipts that come in. So those are not estimates, those are based on actual numbers as far as property tax is concerned. We don't do a whole lot of estimating. They're things that Jonathan's referring to, reports that come from outside sources, or an estimate of how long we expect particular assets to last. Are our transmission and distribution lines going to last 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years? Those are all guesses. They're estimates. And our depreciation expense is based on that estimated life. That's an estimate.
I know we've done that with the new equipment. We've pretty much said that something like 10 years
Right.
for all the stuff that we
Right.
just purchased,
Right.
depending on maintenance. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Anyone else? Okay. Director Hunt.
Well, first, I want to say that congratulations on a clean audit. I mean, this is very impressive, given how complicated this operation is and how much has been going on this year. I'm not surprised, but still, congratulations.
Thank you for that.
And then I just, I wanted to ask if you could elaborate a little bit on the operating expense increase categories of general administrative and transmission and distribution, be a little bit more specific about what that was and whether or not it's something that you expect going forward?
Well, at this level, it is a little bit challenging to look at each individual account that changed, but I do have some notes about some of the salary accounts that changed, and also the fact that the COF compensation survey took effect for the first full year in this fiscal year. It actually took effect May of 2017, so it was right before this fiscal year started. So this is the first full fiscal year where we see those effects of the changes to the salaries and benefits. We also had some open positions in the prior year. So we had filled the, what is now being called the Assistant General Manager of Operations position, and we also filled the Executive Assistant position. Those were either vacant or they were held by a temp prior to that. So those are largely the items that created the variance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then on page 18 of the report, page 33 of our agenda, under investment types, I had two questions. One, I see investments in two different categories: negotiable certificates of deposit and commercial paper. And then it says 30% and then 40% of the district's money. And I couldn't tell if there was a third category that we had investments in, and that, you know, the carry down of 40% of the district's money might have blocked that out, because, you know, total 70%.
Oh, I see what you're
So
saying.
I'm just curious.
Our funds are primarily in the LAIF Local Agency Investment Fund. We do not have any funds in commercial paper, which that percentage comes from a state regulation that, although it's not specifically addressed in the district's investment policy, the state regulation does show these percentages, these maximum percentages, and that's why they're reflected here. But in our case, we don't have any investments in those particular vehicles.
So I just want to reiterate what Ann was saying. This table is based off of the California Government Code. So these are the normal rates, the maturity, or investment types that the state of California has. So it's just a table that we just put in.
Got it. Thank you.
So it's not intended to represent 100%.
Right.
You could have 100% of your funds in any of the categories that say none. There's no limit to the amount of funds. These two areas are particularly limited.
Got it.
That's all.
Got it. And I forgot to say when I was congratulating you, I'm also impressed that we increased a net position this year. And I think that says a lot about all the work that you did and the planning we've done and the decisions we've made. And it just feels like things are very solid and on track, and it's a great feeling, so thank you.
Thank you.
I can say that the district has great cash management.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Anything else on the financial?
Comments?
Yes, sir.
Just like to thank the staff, Kurt, Susan, and especially.
Thank you.
As most of you know, the Finance Committee is the most riveting and exciting committee.
Doesn't this prove it? Yeah.
And this proves it.
Yes.
And kudos to the staff. And just a personal note to Jonathan, as he was presenting this material to the committee, he personally invested himself in looking at these figures. And I took that to heart, because I'll tell you what, when he kind of went through all our figures and looked at everything, he took upon himself as if this money was actually, part and parcel of his own.
Thank you.
Personal interest or property. And the comments that you had made about other districts that had sort of pulled some shenanigans, if you will, general managers buying tickets to Giants games, Chargers, Kurtz, I missed those tickets. All those sort of items that were sort of being, swept under the carpet. And you had said that you take this on as a personal responsibility to our ratepayers.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say publicly, thank you very much, because that really is heartfelt.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much.
Wow. What a recommendation. I'm good, thank you.
Me too. Anything from the audience? You guys had the best, most riveting meeting. I'm so glad that you're here to say finances.
Better than a water leak.
That's good. Thank you very much. Now, what do we need to do? Oh, we have to receive the report.
Yeah.
Accept and file.
Yep.
Do we have some motions? Any motions? No? All right, we will move on to item number 8, updates on the strategic plan. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So,
Okay, so I think at the last board meeting, I briefly mentioned the strategic plan, and we had meetings in October and in November. So you've seen some of this. Start her up. So just to review, vision, whoa. Go back. Oh, I can go back. Oh, this is fun. So the vision is quickly disappearing.
One more time.
To achieve excellence in all district endeavors.
It's on a timer.
Okay, so that's the vision. And then there's the mission. Is it done now?
Gotta read it fast.
All right, the mission, and you all have, or used to have anyway, the mission statement that was rather wordy, and I guess I'd pause and say, the folks that have put this draft strategic plan together that you're going to need to approve, there were 14 employees, a Citizens Advisory Committee member, representative of the board, Tom Floan, I may be missing somebody else, but this is the mission that the staff came up with as a group: to provide, protect, and maintain Joshua Tree's water, our vital community resource, which is almost as good as the tagline, which we're proposing replaces "It's the water."
oh, bummer.
President Luckman. So proudly providing water from an ancient source well into the future. And then what I think out of these many days of discussions and group discussions is a values statement, which we have never had before. And this was written by your employees and edited, etc. But basically, the community of Joshua Tree has entrusted the Board of Directors and the employees of Joshua Basin Water District with its most valuable natural resource, its groundwater. As stewards of the community water supply, we oversee this critical natural resource to ensure current and future water reliability. Dedicated to this purpose, we embrace these important values: integrity, transparency, and respect. And I just felt it was heartwarming coming from the employees, because that's how they feel. And you are in good hands. This community is in good hands. And here are the goals, which we are still currently, we have the goals, the 5 goals, and we are working on objectives that go in each goal and the tasks needed to accomplish those objectives. In late January, February, we will be continuing to flush those things out. In fact, the team has until December 19th to add to them, and then we'll be sending those to Mary Orton. She'll put the whole thing into a draft strategic plan, which we'll bring to you. And at that point, I'm imagining that the board will want to have a workshop So how do I just get to the spreadsheet? By pointing at you or clicking or?
Click at her.
So I'm sure that after the riveting finance committee evenings, you go home and you review the 2012-2013 strategic plan. Right now, it's in the same format as the 2012-13 strategic plan. We don't have the numbers up there, but.
Here's one.
Okay, good. So, goal number 1 is improve the operational efficiency and reliability of the district water resources and infrastructure. And those are the various, then modernize district facilities is one of the objectives within that goal. And then the tasks that have been lined out are still being added to in some cases. Once we get all those tasks, we're going to prioritize them. We're going to come up with our best estimates for costs, and we're going to look at what's available in the budgets going forward, and then put them in the various years 1 through 5, which year 1 is 2018-19, which is now. We still have 6 months left. We are doing some things such as 1.2.1, the mainline replacement saddleback. We've started on that with equipment purchase and advertising positions. Hopefully that one will be completed near the end of the fiscal year. And then the second main line will be the Sunburst mainline replacement the second year. So it'll be lined out by fiscal year and give us a working document which has been put together not just by the board and the management, but by the board, the CAC, and the employees of Joshua Basin Water District. So that's where we are. We'll bring you something back in late January. So that's just an update. We are continuing to work on it. End of report.
I have a question. Can we keep Tom as our representative?
That was my question.
Look at his face. Like,
You're all making this very difficult. In a good sort of way.
So we really appreciate your work on it and the work of the staff that has put into this. This is major, really a big deal.
There is a motion, by the way. If I was on the CAC,
Oh, that was more.
maybe, and push would require directors to put us in it.
We'll see.
You'd be great on the CAC, so I think that's a wonderful idea.
You'll have to vote for me.
Again.
Quick comment.
Yes, sir.
That value statement is fantastic. It's, compliment you all. That's really amazing. Really, really amazing.
Yeah. Any other comments?
The very first thing was like, it says we take care of our most precious resource, our water. It's just an incorrect use of a semicolon. Just, it's a grammatical thing, but
Okay.
good work. Really, really happy that we're doing this. It's wonderful. Thank you.
It's not a semicolon, comma.
Could be a comma, a dash, a full colon.
An ellipsis?
Ellipsis.
Ellipsis.
Yeah.
Parentheses.
Actually, you have the ellipsis there where it says, well into the future, so you don't want to wear it out.
Okay, any comments from the public? Seeing none, thank you for the update on the plan,
Certainly.
and we can move on to the general manager's report.
Already? Okay.
Jim's escaping.
Okay, so the conservation figures for the month of October was 29% lower than October 2013, and the cumulative yearly period from June till October of 22%. And then in November, which just came in today, it was 10% for the month. So we've gone from 29% in October to 10% less water than in 2013. But our cumulative rate is 20%, and we are right on target at the voluntary conservation levels. and revenues continue to come in as projected. Remember a while back, maybe 9 months, a year back, we talked about we were going to work with DWR and change the boundary as depicted on a map where the Warren Valley Basin aquifer was shown coming all the way into central downtown Joshua Tree, although the narrative correctly described it at the Yucca Barrier. The DWR has accepted that, and they're currently in process of receiving public comment on about 47 different boundary adjustments, and ours is one of the ones that is listed as accepted. Just wanted to update you on that. Our local hazard mitigation plan, which Gary Sturdivant, the consultant, ramrodded through with input from the staff. On December 3rd, we heard from Cal Office of Emergency Services. They have 33 different review checkboxes for this plan. One of the boxes was not complete, in their opinion, so Gary Sturdivant is working with them to fix that. It's simply a better documentation of historical events that have caused damage. And that's at no additional expense. It's part of his contract. And it's also being reviewed by FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. The recharge is complete. We took 700 acre-feet this year. We started on September 12th, finished December 5th, today. And that included at least 2 shutdowns. One was the October 13th rain event, which partially flooded and put some mud into our turnout, into Mojave Water Agency's turnout with our meters and our pipeline. They took care of that. And another one was a Southern California Edison outage that required MWA to shut down. So the staff had to start operations at least 3 different times to take that 700 acre-feet. And that's about it for now.
Thank you, sir. We will move on to director comments and reports on meetings attended.
You didn't have anything.
We will start with a non-director, Kathleen Rabbit, to talk about public outreach.
I have a brief update on the United Way Low Income Assistance Program. As you recall, last month I reported we had 40 applications that went through. The August numbers were 16. September was for 10 accounts or assistance applications. October was 12. November, they've only had 2. And so we are now at 42. And that is as of today. A reminder about our December 24th and 25th closures here at the district office, and then again on December 31st and January 1st. We will be having a Legislative and Public Information Committee meeting come January 2nd, right after all the holidays, 9:30 a.m. here at the district office. My heartfelt thank you to Tom for all the help at the market. I'm so glad I am not there for 3 months, because you won't be there either. So thank you. You were a big part of it. And it really has helped having all directors pop in and talk when people came through. It just gave us credibility, more so that the transparency exists. So I thank all of you for this last year, all the efforts made to come by and interact with the public on a weekly basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. We move to Mojave Water Agency Board of Directors, November 8th, Director Lambert.
When I was a reporter for the newspaper, this was the part of a meeting I dreaded the most. The directors have been talking all night, and now they get a chance to give their great thoughts. People would be chewing their foot off to get out of that trap. But I want you to know I am paid well to go to these meetings. When I go to the Mojave Water Agency, I get a per diem and mileage. So listen, please. The open meeting gavelled in at 9:30. All directors were present, with Director Smitty attending by phone. During public comment, this was really interesting, Pacific Gas and Electric, they have a Hinckley gas compression project out there. It's part of the Lahontan area of Mojave Water Agency. And it's been in public comment before with Mojave. The people that live there are not happy with this. They don't like the agreement that seems to be with PG&E and how they get water from Mojave for this. And it's still a very polluted site. And on this meeting on November 8th, the Hinckley project manager, Betsy Brunswick, was there. And she gave a little brief update on how they're remediating the Hinckley groundwater. And she says they are seeing near record level loads of contaminants in the groundwater, and they are trying to control the plume near the Mojave River. An additional concern is that the drought is causing theirs and Golden State Water's groundwater monitoring wells to go dry. And so they're trying to see about getting more groundwater put into control basins this winter, adding 300 300 acres for agricultural treatment areas. The Mojave Board President, Kimberly Cox, she said, well, you know, you've gotten 7 acre-feet of water this year for the agriculture to put into their recharge basins, and Brunswick said that the ag fields need to treat chromium, and that there is significantly more farming in that area that's not related to PG&E. So these are also farming agricultural contaminants that is going into this area, and it's a problem. If people are not happy about it, they talk to Mojave when they come there. We just had an audit tonight. Mojave Water Agency, their audit for fiscal year ending June 30 was approved 7-0 by the directors. They do a lot of stuff in committee, like we do too, but they've got certainly a lot more stuff. The water fix, that Delta conveyance project, they've been working on this for a year and some months. Well, they finally formalized their participation in this water fix Delta conveyance finance authority. That was approved 6-2 Director Thurston Smitty. 1, still not happy with it. It's very expensive. We're all going to be part of it at some point. But Mojave they're committed. They're committed. Board voted 7-0 to amend the water storage agreement between Mojave and the Mojave Basin Water Master to increase their storage to 50,000 acre-feet. The board voted 7-0 to amend the services agreements with the Mojave Desert Resource Conservation District. Cool folks, we work with them. From 25,000 to 50,000. This is going to include the swamp cooler study as well as the irrigation water management program. They did a lot of conversation on this, but the board was not ready to come together on an upgrade for the agency boardroom audiovisual equipment and the servicing agreement. When I looked at this agenda, I thought, God, I'm going to be there. It's going to be noon. But since all this stuff goes through committee, the meeting gavelled in at 9:30 and adjourned at 10:20. So that's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Finance Committee, November 8th.
Well, we heard the audit report, and I'll just sort of take this time, if I may, to thank Director Flowen for his tireless energy on the Finance Committee. You came aboard running, you knew what needed to be done, and I think the staff is most appreciative of, you know, your diligence, and I'd just like to say thanks, and folks are in good hands, and we will see you again.
You never know. I'm old, you know. I don't know.
Water Resources and Operations. I actually printed out my program for that and left it home. Do you have anything to say about that meeting?
It was riveting. I'd have to look at the agenda to remember what we talked
Yeah,
about.
I don't remember. Do you remember?
the update on the shop?
Director
I believe I
Hunt?
was building it right now.
Well, if I'm recalling the correct one, I think one of the things we looked at were the draft position descriptions. But
Oh, yeah.
beyond that, I will bring it to home tonight too.
Yeah, I think that was probably.
Yeah, it was.
Cool. All right, future director meetings and training opportunities. The Mojave Water Agency TAC, Technical Advisory Committee, is tomorrow at 10. I will be attending that. I don't know if anybody else is going to be going. Anybody?
Not tomorrow, no.
I'll cover that. And then the Finance Committee.
Oh.
Be square,
Bob's riveting
or be
Finance Committe
there, or be square.
Will Director,
December 12th at 9 a.m.
will Director Flown still be on that?
I don't. I didn't know when the certification.
We don't,
Yeah.
there's some things we don't know.
They, supposedly the counties the county is saying that they're gonna have everything in by the 6th, and that they should have it wrapped up in the county part certified. The state is still saying they have until the 7th, and then another week until the 14th to certify, so however we plan to go with this.
Well, do I have any volunteers to be on the Finance Committee?
Well, I'll be
That guy,
there.
you serious?
I've gone to a lot of the meetings, and they really are, everything happens there.
Yes, it does. That's excellent. You are not a finance person.
Well, of course, Bob has to, oh, okay, all right.
Bob doesn't have anything to say about it at the moment.
Sorry, Bob.
Sergeant
Me.
Major's at it again, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, hey, listen, when you've got power, I'm gonna lose it at the next meeting. So I'm gonna use it while I've got it. Water Resources and Operations follows that, and that is me and Director Hunt. So that actually is an interesting meeting. Is there anything gonna go on for it? Anything you know of?
Yeah, we have some more job descriptions to discuss, so
Cool.
moving forward.
Exciting stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah, it really is a good meeting. Mojave Basin Pipeline Commission is December 12th. That again is mine. I've been doing that since I've been on this board. And there are some interesting issues coming up that I'll report on next time. Jim Ventura called me. There are some things that are really hot.
That's a good committee, that pipeline commission, that's a
Yes,
good
and
meeting.
anyone's welcome to
Yeah.
go to that. I think the next one is at High Desert, but I'd have to double check.
This
that.
one says Mojave here, but
Is the Mojave, Oh, Mojave, I don't think it's up there. I don't think we ever meet up there, but I'll check. And then the Mojave Water Agency Board of Directors is December 13th. Director Flowen won't be a director at that time. Anybody want to volunteer to go to that?
I'll volunteer.
Okay, so Director Unger will take that one on the 13th. And with that, is there anything else?
A comment?
Yes.
So Director Unger is now on the Finance Committee?
Yay!
Okay,
Yes,
just wanted to clarify.
yes.
Can I make one last?
Yes, sir.
Kurt
Sir.
made a joke one time, it was funny. About how I was going to the leaks and repairs at such frequency that I should have been handed a shovel.
Oh,
And at the time, I should have said I would have been honored to work alongside these guys out there. They're superior. One of my favorite videos is of Jeremiah with his head in a hole with a ratchet wrench trying to put a strap around a leak over there in one of our current projects, Saddleback up there, with Kenny on the vacuum trying to keep the water and the muck out of the hole while your head is down there. And it's, or if they've got to cut concrete to get at a leak in front of the VFW on Veterans Way right there. Well, that was a fun chat too. I wasn't too much of a nuisance. But I talked to Randy Little's wife one time at the phone store, and she made reference to the times that her husband had to get out of bed in the middle of the night when there were leaks in the field to go make repairs. And, imagine it could be a night like this one where it's cold, it's already wet, there's a hole to be dug. You gotta stick your face down there in the hole while another guy's deflecting the water with a shovel. I've seen all these things, and it's all true. And these guys have been doing this for years, bearing the burden of frustration of knowing that their district was not doing its best to keep things in good repair and in reliable condition. And they bore the brunt for years and years and years and years. And it's just a tremendously impressive group of people that we have out there. And inside, if people, I assume at some point this audit thing is going to go onto the website, just scan some of this stuff and see how impenetrable and technical and legal some of these documents, the loan document for the $3,010,000 that we are, very substantial documents in the greatest of detail, overlapping information, and it's just sometimes confounding for a normal person. No offense intended. Actually, I actually mean that because you folks are not normal. You are exceptional. You're amazing. I know Susan, it's apparent on her face when she talks about Ann Roman, who's in the pink right there. She's just tremendously proud of Ann and the support and the help and the relief of having her. We're not going to cry, are we? We might. I've been crying a couple times already over all this. But inside and out, everybody is just doing their very best. I'm awfully, tremendously proud. Occasionally there have been gaps between the people that work on the outside in the shop and the people that are on the inside. And I think some of these strategic planning meetings, the barbecue that we had, I thought the barbecue was a milestone when Mickey and I, the president, went over and sat with the guys with the lined shirts on and started talking about tractors and stuff and how it just sort of, I could feel it bringing everybody together. And on that strategic plan that we're still working on, apparently, that had considerable heavy contribution from the outside guys there. I was somewhat surprised at that. Some of the rebel community were some of our most productive and positive about how we wanted to carry this district into the future. It's just all really good with somewhat of a timeline because the place is getting older and older and older, and there's some in the community that put on a pressure to keep things as they were, seemingly not understanding that everything wears out. This stuff does not last forever, and it's got to be replaced at modern standards at much more expensive prices than we think we should pay. I mean, try and buy a 4-cent candy bar anymore and see how big it'll be. That's how much I paid. I used to give a nickel for a candy bar and get change back when I was a kid. You can't do that. They're over $1 now, I think. Look at that sign on the Motel 6 in 29 over there. The Motel 6 meant that the rooms were $6. Now I think they're $53.99 for a $6 room. Everything goes up that way. And the people that live here and pay the bills, it's actually about 12,000 people that pay the bills if you consider the property tax part of it that they're paying. They have to understand that that money is needed very badly. If you look at the list of things that standby charges pay for, how would we pay for all of that without that standby thing on the property tax? Everybody's got an investment in this community. If there's no water here, this place is a pile of dirt. Nobody would be here. And it's the key thing here is that the water company is the diamond that's in the middle of this necklace that we have here. It is, without this, there's nothing. And that has a cost to it. Should I stop now?
Yeah, probably.
I'm very, this was very challenging. I am an introverted person. I like to keep my gate locked all the time. I do come out for important things like food and gasoline and the farmer's market and participating in this water company, because I think it's something that we in the community should all be doing. And I'm not going to disappear because I still hold the most important position in this community on the water, at the water company, and that's being a ratepayer.
Yes, sir.
Times 3, actually, in my case. I'm a ratepayer, and I'm here to keep an eye on folks. Trouble is, there's not a trouble, but I keep an eye on you, and everything is good. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Gary?
Thank you.
Well, Tom may end up attending another meeting or two, depending on how things go, but I just want to say what a great pleasure it's been having you on the board, Tom, and have a great deal of respect for you, and I think you have contributed as much as anyone that I've ever worked with in a situation like this, and I know everybody here knows it, and I'm still confounded by the results of the election, and I hope you will stay with us in some capacity. I hope you'll consider getting back on the advisory committee, and hey, 60 is, the new 40 or whatever they say, so I know you say you're getting older, but I hope you consider running again next time around.
I'm almost 70, so. But
That's the
It's
new
the new 60.
Anyway, so I'll stop there, but thank you so much.
thank you.
Director Johnson?
I'll ditto all of that and just say it's been a pleasure. And I would just like to be mindful of the passing of President George Bush, President 41, and the nation's beholden to him and his service, beholden to the men and women in uniform and all the first responders, and you guys are part of that, the crew, so you know what it all means to be on the front lines. And just Godspeed to the family. And also, Kurt, I assume you're going to say something about Jerry?
If you'd like me to, yes.
I would, and, it's just, I guess it's the season, but, we just are thankful for those people that come across our way and that are true troopers, and hats off and Godspeed.
Thank you. Director Unger?
I just want to say, Tom, I've been watching this water district since 2007, and you are probably the best director I've ever seen on this board. You came to all the meetings and attended everything when you didn't have to, but you were interested and you cared. And that's a foundation that you either have it or you don't. And so, thank you.
And I will agree. I think you're the best director I've worked with, and I've been on this board 10 years. So we will miss you very, very much. And I hope you will be on the CAC. And you guys, thank you for being here. It's really nice to look out and see some of your faces out there. So thank you very much. And
No one's chewing on their foot, that's good.
and then, Kurt, you want to talk about Jerry?
So I received a phone call from Gil Granito, our counsel, and I believe it was yesterday. And with much sorrow, he reported that his partner, Gary Egan's partner in the firm, you'll remember Gary is the tall lawyer that told lawyer jokes on the various occasions that he had been here. He passed away last week after an illness with cancer, and we send his family our condolences.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey, anything else? Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I move we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much for everyone here.